ship, right? So before we go making any big revelations about Star Wars, we have to get down to nuts and bolts. Literally. According to Wikipedia, the hull of the Death Star is made out of a substance known as quadanium steel. According to the information we have,
Quadanium plates.
all the outside parts of the Death Star are made from this steel alloy, which is super strong armor. And while it may be tough, it's not like it's impenetrable or anything, since all the generations of TIE fighters we see in the original trilogy were also made out of this alloy. We also see that it can be blown up pretty much like any other regular ship. So it's a special steel, but since there's not a lot of information on it and it looks and functions a lot like normal metal, in our calculations we're going to just treat it like a regular steel alloy. Fortunately for us, some economics students,
It's a big emphasis on theory.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's the same as any other metal. That's all we found on it.
Pardon?
Way to really get us with those numbers.
Yeah. Use someone else's theory
fellow
to boost
Star
your own.
Warsians at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania actually calculated how much steel it takes to build the Death Star. As with any fictional device that you're trying to bring into the real world, you're gonna face some limitations, and as a result, make some assumptions. For them, they compared the Death Star to what would basically be a battleship, but instead of floating on water, it floats in space. This is pretty rational since they both need to be protected from all kinds of weaponry, both have to be airtight, and they're both weapon platforms that need to be totally self-contained either in the vacuum of space or in the middle of the ocean. Next, they took the dimensions of the Death Star, which according to the Star Wars Encyclopedia and the online wikis is 140 kilometers in diameter.
Alright, well now it seems like we're mixing sources. So first he says that it's like regular metal,
Yeah.
which he found from a different key page, but now he's bringing different dimensions from a separate wiki page altogether.
Or about 87 miles across. Just to give you some context, that's 1/25th the size of the moon. Next, they scaled everything up from a modern warship to the size of the Death Star, and found that you would need 1.08 times 10 to the 15th tons of steel to construct, as in 1.08 times 1,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000. And sometimes this happens with
Really see that his voice cuts multiple times there.
Yeah.
He didn't just say 12 zeros, or maybe it was 15 zeros.
If he had said 12 zeros at once, he would have gotten out of
0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
with our theories,
Yeah.
right? Where the numbers just get so ridiculously big for us to even know what they mean. So let's put this in perspective. Comparing that number to the steel on Earth, it actually doesn't look that crazy. Based on the amount of iron in the planet Earth, iron alloy makes steel, by the way, just so you know, you could actually produce 2 million Death Star shells out of it. Granted, the Earth would literally be mined dry, completely gone, and the core would be gutted, but it seems like producing just
Wait, but we're working with multiple planets here.
Yeah, we still haven't really confirmed that's the exact same thing as steel, but I guess we're running with it.
And we still have multiple planets of multiple different sizes that are all hospitable.
Yeah.
So realistically, you could just go mining about 10 different planets and get enough steel without destroying it.
I don't think he means that we would actually do that. He's just trying to make a comparison here.
I know.
completely gone and the core would be gutted, but it seems like producing just one measly Death Star wouldn't be such a big deal. That is, until you look at how long it actually takes to turn the raw iron into steel. At the current rate Earth produces steel, it would take our planet more than 800,000 years just to get enough for the Death Star. And that's not even counting all the other components and parts that you'd need for such a massive space station. How long does it take to produce enough steel to build your everyday warship for the ocean?
I have to wonder: is he gonna take into account shipyard welding, manufacturing within the Star Wars universe, or is he gonna go by Earth years?
He takes all of his information and goes by Earth info. He doesn't.
Yeah, are we gonna get sources for how they make Star Destroyers, because those require metal, and they use different technology to turn whatever material they have in Star Wars into quadranium steel.
Yeah.
Or is he gonna basically go by this, which would be inaccurate?
What do you think is gonna happen?
Probably just gonna go by Earth years because he doesn't really like to go in depth with Star Wars lore.
An hour. Okay, so this is gonna be a big project. But it doesn't stop there. Knowing how much steel it takes is all well and good, but you can't just mine a gajillion tons of steel for free. That much steel is gonna need some serious cash. Here's where the numbers get really crazy. Our friends at Lehigh kept researching the stats of the Death Star and were able to calculate that at the price of steel in 2012, 1.08 times 10 to the 15th tons of steel would cost you about $852 quadrillion. Compare
Alright, how does that translate to Star Wars credits?
And how does that translate
how
to
much
multiple
how
planets
much
as
does
well?
it how much in general just does it cost in the Star Wars universe? How are they doing it? Come on, man.
Yeah.
On Earth,
If
sure,
you-
it would probably
if you-
cost as much due to our limited technology, but they have different kinds of technology, some of it being more advanced than ours.
And if you couldn't find out the information in the Star Wars universe, then say that.
Whatever.
Compare that to the gross world product for 2014. That's how much money was produced by the entire world economy of every country in a year. The gross world product in 2014 was 77,868,000,000,7.
Are we still going by the gross world?
Yes.
By our Earth? Back to
Yes.
Star Wars credits. We'll look that up real quick.
What?
Dollars
Real world dollar to
to Imperial credits because they built the Death Star.
One credit is worth $2 US. Yeah.
See here, Galactic Credit Standard. It doesn't say. Oh well.
Like Reddit did some research and they determined it would be around $2 in the US, anyways.
I see.
$768,000,000. That means the price for just the steel on the Death Star would be almost 11,000 times all the money made in the world in a single year. And I want to make sure that we're really clear here that this isn't just some huge number I'm waving out in front of you. This cost of the Death Star has actually been verified in writing by our own US government. Good job, guys. These are the sorts of things that you should be wasting your time on. A couple years ago, a particular
We're not. We shouldn't be going by Earth standards. We should be trying to find out how much it costed in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. And
I feel like I should just like record myself saying, "What about in Star Wars?" and then just play it every single time.
Yeah.
You know, I'll do that right now. What about in Star Wars? I will play that line.
Okay.
Whenever it's relevant.
He also has to account for multiple planets as well.
Does.
Yeah, like how many
petition for the
planets
US
are there?
government
2,000?
circulated to build a real Death Star, under the assumption that it would help us bolster our national defense, and obviously fend off the Rebel Alliance. Sorry, I just love that this was a real thing that happened. It got so many signatures that the White House officially responded to it with a huge letter. Even though they ultimately declined the request to build a gigantic death ray in space, they did use data to back up their decision. They also pointed out that blowing up planets isn't a good idea, but offered an alternative solution. If the government wasn't going to fund it, you could always ask for private funding through NASA's Commercial Crew and Cargo Program Office, otherwise known as C-3PO. I kid you not. The world is run by a bunch of nerds. It is glorious. So yes, confirmed by the US government, this is seriously what it would cost to build a Death Star. And we're just talking about the basic model. Remember, you also need a lot more than steel to keep this thing going. You need tons of quarters for crews, you need all the internal life support systems, onboard computers, laser engines, huge plasma containment cells. The steel is just the beginning. Again, making the best comparison we can between the Death Star and a regular warship, we can make a rough calculation for how much the rest of the components would cost. Our friends over at Lehigh used the USS Gerald Ford, which cost $17.5 billion, including R&D. If we extrapolate that out to the Death Star, the total cost for the first Death Star would be as high as $193 quintillion. So,
What about in Star Wars?
Silly.
Yep. That's pretty much how I would summarize that. I think that could be
so
the
that's how
bulk
much
of our
the Death
arguments
Star
for
would
this,
cost in our
actually.
Earth dollars today, and that seems right. And it is for a single.
You still there?
Yeah. I was just getting the stream up on a different thing so I can respond. Alright. Continue.
Connected for a second.
Oh.
Like I said, what about in Star Wars?
Yeah.
A single planet. Remember, we're only looking at it from Earth's perspective.
Exactly.
The Death Star was built using an entire galaxy's worth of resources, where there are thousands of inhabited planets and trillions of people. Coruscant alone has
And
over 1
trillions of
trillion
resources.
inhabitants.
So is he gonna start translating this U.S. data to Star Wars galactic currencies, or is he just gonna keep going and bring up this information for no reason?
What do you think is going to happen?
Probably somewhere closer to the latter.
When you look at it that way, and also that it took about 20 years to build, it's actually not that bad. But while the cost of building the Death Star isn't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of the galaxy, the cost of destroying the Death Star is something else entirely. When the first Death Star was being built, almost everyone in the galaxy was pretty much just going about their own business. Like we said, building the space station doesn't really affect them all that much.
I mean, not really. The Empire was killing tons of people.
Actually, that's not even true. The Empire took over, and then they started building the Death Star.
And they slaughtered, like, God knows how many people as well.
Yeah, the plans were laid out before Empire took over.
It wasn't a peaceful takeover.
But it wasn't being built yet.
And it wasn't a peaceful takeover either. This was one of the most violent takeovers in the history of this universe.
It's a government project, just like building a bridge. But when good old Luke Skywalker comes along and uses the Force, that's when the real problems for the galaxy start. I'm not talking about planets blowing up, although, yeah, sorry about that, Alderaan.
Crap.
So pretty much, the good of the sacrifice the few for the good of the many.
Yeah. Well,
Start. I'm not talking about planets blowing up, although, yeah, sorry about that, Alderaan. I'm talking.
you shouldn't blow up the Death Star because, money.
Yeah. Let
I mean,
trillions die because my economy.
Talking about everyone.
Besides, Luke would only be destabilizing the Imperial economy, which would probably...
Wouldn't affect the Outer Rim, because they don't have...
It would probably only affect the military, not the outer-lying systems that are sympathetic to the rebellion.
Mm-hmm. Like, even then, the Empire...
So even if you're hurting some citizens of the Empire, it's an extremely effective military tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's worst nightmare, a recession. And before you laugh this off...
Again,
It affects...
let trillions die to stop the Empire from having to cut military costs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the humanity!
This off, a recession across an entire galaxy is no cakewalk. The biggest...
No, not the entire galaxy. The Empire really only ran the core and the
And
mid rim. The outer rim was mostly
neutral.
yes.
And even then, he's basing this recession off of economics based on our planet.
Yes. I'm guessing that a galaxy that's far bigger than the United States and our Earth is going to have
Probably bigger than
a
our own
much
galaxy,
larger
too.
gross domestic product than we would.
It would hurt it a tiny bit.
I think it would hurt it somewhat, but honestly, it's the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
If the Death Star were just a harmless ball floating in space, then I would say no, don't do it. But
Mm-hmm. Even then, it's 1/25th the size of the moon.
mhm,
The moon is fucking tiny.
yeah,
There's countries.
if the Empire needs to get more resources to expand their economy, they can easily do it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they've already been doing it since they took over. They strip planets dry, like
Yeah.
Jeddah.
Mm-hmm. Here's a good question.
Was this video made before Rogue One?
Not sure.
If so, all right. Let's see here. It was made just a little
Just
bit
before?
afterward.
Oh.
Just a little bit
Okay.
afterwards. No,
Here's a-
it was actually way before. I'm stupid.
here's
Okay, you get kind of a pass, even though you should already
Yeah.
know it, that they strip planets dry for resources.
Yeah. Here's
Ignore me and don't read all the extended material. We'll
Yeah.
let you go.
Yeah. Here's
issue
the
here is
good
that
question, though.
terrorist-
What's bigger, the Death Star or Europe?
Let's see here.
Because Europe's pretty tiny. Let's figure that out another time.
Area of Europe. It's 3.931 square million miles. Or million square miles. Area
Yeah.
of
I think
moon.
that's-
Yeah, it's way bigger than Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about like the size of Russia or something, right?
Yeah, it's about 4.75 times bigger than Europe.
Okay. Alright, let's continue.
Attacks hurt the economy and bad, and destroying the Death Star would be labeled as the largest ever act of galactic terrorism. Oh yeah, it's easy to forget.
Does Europe have any citizen destroying weapons?
No, most
I mean, sure, it is technically an act of terrorism.
and even
It's not like Paris routinely executes
and wouldn't
droves of its citizens because it feels like it.
wouldn't destroying the whole planet hurt the economy more than destroying a super weapon?
Yeah, I mean, you've basically cut off all of your resources infinitely. You've literally. I mean,
Isn't
because the Death Star destroys a planet entirely, only leaving like rocks floating around.
that is
That you've basically
you've
flatlined that
Mhm.
section of your economy.
Mm-hmm. That is the biggest act of terrorism in history that will greatly impact the economy.
I mean, like, there's a meme
Mhm.
about Grand Moff Tarkin.
He
For all of his
reduced-
flaws, he reduced Alderaan unemployment to 0.
Yeah.
You know what he also reduces? Employment.
Yeah.
Amidst the cool laser swords and fun space battles, that the rebels are exactly that. Rebels. Sure, the government may be controlled by an evil Sith Lord, but it's a stable system. And even then,
Is it, though? Is it?
A stable
Is it,
system
though?
that has killed what, a million people?
Sure, it's stable, but what does that really say? It's
After
still
how many people they've
awful.
killed. Sure, North Korea is stable, but
Stable, so it's good.
But-
And Star Wars Rebels shows that basically the Empire strips. Star Wars Rebels is disproving Matpat here. Basically shows that the Empire exploits its citizens and their resources for their own economic gain.
Yeah, that came out.
Even
What?
even if it was not subtle at all, not developed upon, it's shown that that's in the canon.
Yeah.
The Empire, it's in the Mandalorian, an Imperial a sympathizer basically says that the Empire was gone, that it became like a chaotic mess. I mean, sure, but now you don't have people trying to blow up your planet.
You don't have innocents being slaughtered as much in the course of
Yes, and honestly, and afterwards, honestly, the galaxy was a pretty nice place.
Yeah.
Even if the Outer Rim was pretty
Until Disney attacked.
chaotic.
Yeah.
The majority of the populace don't even realize that Vader and Palpatine are all that bad. To them, Luke, Han, Leia, and all the rest are extremists trying to
Didn't you bring
That's
up how
bad.
most of the Outer Rim sympathize with the rebels earlier?
I did. They're either neutral towards them or they sympathize with them.
Outside of like the Hutts, pretty much.
Well, the Hutts sometimes make alliances with the rebels, but that's extended
Hutts also have
material.
alliance with the Republic too.
Yes.
Alright.
Jesus Christ. I mean, no, the rebels are not viewed as extremists. The
No.
Empire sees rebels as extremists. Guerrera is the extremist. He is labeled as a terrorist by the rebels.
Who? Saw Gerrera
From Rogue One.
Oh.
They called him an extremist. He
or?
they ambush Imperial patrols and leave no survivors.
Yeah.
He's an extremist. The rebels are actually seen as heroes in many areas.
Yeah, like
Even if
on Coruscant,
even if the propaganda of the Empire puts them down.
But even on Coruscant, where the propaganda will be the strongest, they're celebrating in Return of the Jedi.
Exactly.
God.
Doesn't seem like terrorists to me. Seems like the rebels were fighting for the right thing all along.
And it's not like the Empire wiped out the Jedi Order.
And the Empire isn't necessarily bad because of Palpatine and Darth Vader. They're not really an extension of the economic and political
Tarkin's
rip
evil.
of the Empire. Yeah, Tarkin is more in line with what people people attack. And guess what? On Lothal in Star Wars Rebels, he's seen somebody who's disliked. In fact, he burns down.
Didn't he have two guys?
He burns down a town full of Imperial sympathizers.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Didn't he have two guys?
And you don't get an excuse for that because Star Wars Rebels Season 1 came out during 2014.
Yeah.
Goofed.
Didn't he have those two guys executed by the Inquisitor too?
Oh yeah, he did.
throw the government and just successfully blew up the largest military base in history. And that
Military base. Focus on that. Military base. Citizens don't live on the Death Star. These are military officers. Rebels are in the rebels are in a war. Now, the Empire doesn't see it that way, but the rebels are going to attack military targets, especially when their planet is threatened. This is honestly silly, man. I don't know what to say.
That isn't good. Compare the Death Star attack to something we know
They just use the old explosion instead of the new one.
here, the 9/11 attacks. Following 9/11, two of the world's most important stock in
You cannot seriously be comparing the two. World Trade Center, a military target.
Like, they're two different things.
My God.
Jesus Christ.
Like, in A New Hope, Tarkin says, would you prefer a different target, a military target? Because when you attack military targets, it's not seen as a war crime. You know what is a war crime? Blowing up planets.
Innocent planets.
Full of innocent civilians. The Alderaan wasn't even a military planet. It sympathized with the rebellion, but it only provided relief effort. And they had no proof that it was that it sympathized with the rebels. They only wanted to do it because Leia
was from
born
there.
there. This is sad.
Apart
the
from that
S&P
one
500.
short scene Revenge of the Sith, did we ever actually go and see what Alderaan looks like?
Yeah, we did. In Clone Wars.
Oh, okay.
But we didn't see that much of it then either.
Yeah.
Dropped overnight by 14% and 12% respectively, and then stayed.
Hey, do you remember what was hit after 9/11? Was
World
something
Trade
called the
Center,
World Trade Center. You know,
Pentagon,
had to do
and
with
then
the
another plane
economy.
crashed in a field.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
If the Death Star was actually the New York Stock Exchange, then you'd have a point here. But it's not. It's a military weapon.
Like, granted, the Pentagon was hit on 9/11 too, but that's only one part of the military.
Yes. It's not like it was completely eradicated.
They were able to build it back up.
There. Now, you don't have to know what those are. It's a topic for another day. What you do need to know: double-digit drops like this result in economic crashes, as consumers become nervous and spend less money, which in turn results in less income for companies. Companies are then forced to make layoffs, and the resulting higher unemployment means even less spending. Lower productivity for everyone, companies and individuals alike. The economy struggles to recover. Destroying the Death Star would cause this kind of collapse, except instead of being on a national scale, this would literally ripple across thousands of other planets. The other big problem in the destruction of the Death Star is the murder of major political and military figures. This might...
Those aren't political figures. Those are, as you said, military figures.
Yeah, Tarkin's the only one who is technically a political.
He explained that these are. He explained that these military men are different from the people who directly rule, as he said, the regional governors.
Yeah, even then, the only one who was really a politician there was Tarkin. Everyone else
Exactly.
was admirals and stuff, right?
And again, he was still a military man. He still made military decisions.
And he's basing
This
his
might seem like a good-
recession off of our economics, not the Star Wars economics.
good thing because, yeah, we got the bad guys. Especially with the second Death Star, you're talking about killing Emperor Palpatine. But history shows that killing off major world leaders doesn't exactly stimulate the economy. This is comparable to April 23rd, 2013, when the Associated Press made a mistake of tweeting that the White House had been hit by a terrorist attack and that President Obama had been injured. Of course, the tweet was wrong, but in the 4 minutes it took before they got it retracted, the stock market dropped by 1%. In 4 minutes! There's no question that the immediate impact of Luke destroying the Death Star would be to send the galactic economy reeling. The galactic...
No, you have not really proven that. You've used Earth economics and extrapolated it onto Star Wars without making any adjustments.
And Palpatine died on the second Death Star and was killed, and that blew up with the wedge and land.
The only major, and I have to stretch this, like, major figure was Tarkin, and at the time he wasn't even a political.
Yeah.
We only learned that in Star Wars Rebels and other expanded material.
Well, technically, you're
We're
wrong.
off base here, Matpat.
Yeah.
Federation would take a huge hit, slowing down all the major galactic...
Wait,
Trade Federation was shut down, man.
Yeah,
Shut
they ended in between 3 and 4.
Trade franchise was revoked.
Mm-hmm.
Watch these movies, man. You're not.
Fuck.
Trade routes and causing serious resource shortages I cannot say that. I cannot say that for the
I can't say that either.
Shortages.
Resource shortages. There we go.
It's a little tricky, but yeah. Even then,
resource shortages.
trade.
Yeah.
Slower trade.
Trade. It's a military base.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Death Star was not made by workers and merchants and engineers.
Slaves.
It was made by slaves.
Mm-hmm.
You had bothered to look that up.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to say. Resource shortages. Causing serious resource shortages as remote planets see their imports take a big hit. I did it! And things only get worse from there. Remember, the Rebels destroy 2 Death Stars, and when Palpatine dies in Death Star 2, his absence would lead to a temporary collapse of the entire political...
Everybody's happy it's
system
celebrating a
without any
lot.
sort of central structure or leader. This collapse would also mean that the Empire would have defaulted on all of its debt to the planets. That might not seem like a big deal, but it means that
Except
basically
the
the
Empire
Empire
didn't
can't.
immediately go away, though. They were just
No, not exactly. There was a struggle for power among the regional governors.
yeah.
However,
but
since they didn't have the same strength and unity at the core that the Palpatine did, they all were quickly either assassinated or captured.
yeah, and even then, they were still a smaller faction in the EU. Think of this Thrawn trilogy.
Yes, thanks to their losses at Endor and Jakku, the mass majority of Imperial forces were wiped out, and they were forced to use guerrilla tactics and cunning strategy like Thrawn.
Yeah.
Of course, now First Order just exists and all that.
Yeah, because we
Pay
need new
anyone
Empire.
back for anything, including the Death Stars. All those money you used to make this thing, to use a phrase from South Park, and it's gone. These are the most expensive military projects in history. Not to mention the Empire has been financing a war against the rebels for years. One might call it a war on terror, and now none of it can be paid for. All the industries related to military and arms manufacturing.
Did you just use the Kaminoans were enemies of the Empire after the war?
Yeah. So were
The
the
Trade Federation and Techno Union were shut down,
ba-
along
was
with all the Geonosian factories which were destroyed in the Second Battle of Geonosis.
was the banking
Jesus
plant shut down?
Christ, man!
Was the banking plant shut down, or did you just get new people?
The banking clan. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's. I don't know.
And many other industries would follow suit as a result. So what does all this mean? Well, first of all, it means that destroying the Death Star is a lot more complicated than the good guys won. In fact, it's pretty reasonable to think that destroying the Death Star and Emperor Palpatine wouldn't lead back to a prosperous democratic republic where everyone gets flowers and medals. It would actually lead to a deep recession and a massive power grab where lots of individual factions rush to try to fill the void left by the Emperor and take
Hold the
The
phone.
rebels and the rebels.
No, the rebels and the Jedi, and then
control of the galaxy.
Starbucks. The Star
Star
Trek people.
God knows what
Galaxy.
else.
Meanwhile,
The first. Okay, well, we never understood why the First Order did what they did because sequel trilogy, world building and stuff. They just wanted to take over the galaxy because the New Republic is bad.
Because the New Republic beat the Empire.
Don't understand. Like, are they Empire sympathizers, but they're so much more powerful than the Empire?
And destroying their super weapon only makes them stronger.
In fact, they actually let the Resistance blow up their super weapon, so that way they could destroy them in The Last Jedi. The only problem is Holdo, the military genius, was on their side, and that's the only reason why they lost.
Hold up, in both canons, wasn't it after like a few years the Republic was perfectly stable?
Yeah, there was a
years.
power vacuum that was filled by the New Republic.
But then, like 2 years later, they managed to figure it out in 2 years and get everything stable again.
Yes, you were correct.
Now, the ordinary citizens of the galaxy would suffer for years to come, cut off from all supplies and resources from other planets, stuffing their credits into their mattresses and waiting out the recession caused by the Jedi. Destroying the Death Star would actually
wasn't
have the
caused by the
exact
Jedi.
opposite effect
Whatever.
It was caused by the rebels. Jesus Christ.
Whatever.
that Luke and the Jedi think it will. Or not.
No,
That's the
blowing
point
up
here.
the-
Ultimately, there's a big difference between a pollution and a violent revolution. We think of Emperor Palpatine as being this really destructive guy, but his revolution from Old Republic to Empire was much smoother and safer economically.
He murdered the entire Jedi Order, shut down every single Separatist production facility, even ones that weren't Separatists,
Slaughtered thousands
and
of
he
innocent people.
killed anybody who dared protest. And it went smoother.
Oh, God.
Economically
This
than
has
the
to be
rebels'
a
hostile
joke.
takeover. Sure, Palpatine used manipulation and coercion to get power, and eventually bumped off a few Jedi.
A few.
Few.
Yeah.
Yeah, only all of them.
Oh, but like 50.
He only individually killed 4 of them, and then in
Then
order,
then the
which
other
is technically committing a
white-
war crime by using a type of mind control for your privatized army. That's
Yeah,
part of
then
a
the other
direct
97%
war to
got
murder
white.
religious figures. It's a
Yeah.
war crime,
Yeah. Then
and technically a hate crime. If
yeah,
you think about it.
he had his personal army commit biggest hate crime by wiping out 97% of all the Jedi.
Yes, he would be arrested.
But because he's
Even if
emperor,
he did cover it all up by saying the Jedi were traitors, but
terrorists and shit.
yes, but he's not.
Yeah.
But by going by film theory's logic, by Matpat's logic,
He's completely innocent.
Yes.
He created a brand new prosperous age for the peace and kumbaya.
Yes.
But he pretty much left the galactic population alone in the process.
he didn't.
Everyone
did
else
not.
was able to live their lives without too much problem. Again,
Um,
sorry,
um,
Alderaan. Bummer for you. The armed and violent coup that the Rebel Alliance performs
that
is much
guy-
more sudden and
In front of C-3PO looks like Hayden.
let's go back.
process. Everyone else was able
Just want to say, like, beautiful this shot is right here.
Yeah. Is that from Revenge of the
to
Sith?
live their lives without
It's Attack of the Clones.
Oh. Damn.
Yeah. I always love this ending sequence with the red.
Oh, yeah. It was on the other side of Coruscant.
Yeah, it lives in the industrial sector.
Mm.
too much problem.
Like there's the golden city in the background with his red ship flying away.
Mm-hmm.
Again, sorry, Alderaan. Bummer for you. The armed and violent coup that the Rebel Alliance performs
That
is
guy looks exactly like
Does
Hayden.
kind of look like Hayden.
Yeah. Is that
Uh,
Wedge is sitting next to Luke too, right?
No, I had no idea for the longest time that the guy who played Wedge is actually Ewan McGregor's uncle.
I didn't find out until I watched an interview like a year or two ago either. Like he uses an American accent, so that's probably why.
Yeah.
Alliance performs is much more sudden and ultimately more destructive to more people. Really, if the Rebel Alliance truly wanted to bring peace to the galaxy, a better way of life for everyone, to reform their
Look at that better way of life that he just showed.
republic, they will have needed to take a page from the dark side and work a little magic behind the scenes rather than destroying.
They did that too.
Yeah.
They
Like,
did
they
that too.
They had people in the Senate before the Senate was dissolved.
Yes. It was, you see, getting rid of democracy, probably not excellent for the economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Right now-
Wouldn't dissolving any opposing politicians or whatever ruin things?
It certainly would have an effect.
Yeah.
The Death Star, but the whole galaxy's way of life. So what, The Force Awakens takes place 30 years after the original trilogy? Huh, no. Everyone there should be in utter economic devastation. That's the true story of The Force Awakens. But hey, that's just a theory.
a theory.
A film
A film
theory.
theory.
And cut. And if you can't get enough Star Wars,
I think I had enough Star Wars for now.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
That was really bad, man. How did we got it over and done with so quickly? I don't think I'd like to be here for 5 hours discussing this extremely thin video. Man.
Mm-hmm.
One of these days, we're gonna come across a video. It's gonna be like a real challenge, and we're all gonna be all unprepared for it because we get stuff like this every single day.
Yeah. You wanna
But until then, that's just a theory. A
Oh,
podcast theory.
Thanks for watching.
Alright, well, CP, if you're listening, I think that's done.
Yeah.
Overall, I'd give the video 3 out of 10.
Perhaps film theory on why Luke shouldn't destroy the Death Star is the worst thing I've seen since my son.
Star Wars Episode 4 Save the Death Star is the most disappointing movie since my son.
Star Wars.
If you think that Matpat is the worst YouTuber because he's the most boringest, then leave this video right now before I tell you how much of a fucking idiot you are.
The most greatest YouTuber I've ever seen who got so little research and then his rabid fan base treats very.
That's just a theory. A Plinkett theory. What's wrong with your face?
Luke Skywalker. Mario. Kirby.
Okay. Well, I'm done, SCP. We're gonna leave now.
Alright. Goodbye, everyone. Hope to be on again sometime. Au revoir.